anyway, is that you just don't use ED. Anything else is pretty much fair game. And we tried to make use of all the tools available to us, of which there are many. We have access to door glitches, out of bounds, death holes, all kinds of fun ways to manipulate the game's memory and to kind of warp around the underworld. Now, truth be told, we don't actually kill Ganon in this. We don't kill him, but we still have to deal with him in some way. But as we are starting off, since we can't go to the Uncle Tunnel right away, we've got to find a way around, so we're just going to clip out of the starting area where the house is to get around these golden guards. This is the exact same thing that we had seen earlier in this marathon with the Armos RTA run that Glenn did near the start of the marathon. Now we're heading over to Eastern, mostly just so we can get the boots as early as possible. One thing to note right now is that Chex cannot do a little punch that often happens when you are swordless in this game, because he has this invisible follower behind him. This invisible follower is there whenever you start up a new game and stays with you until you talk to Uncle or until you talk to Zelda. Now, this invisible follower is extremely annoying and is actually the one responsible for giving you these Zelda text messages that you see, and one should be cropping up, I think, in the Stalfos kill room up ahead, if not a little bit earlier. There it is. So these messages are often quite annoying and interrupt the flow of you going through the first couple of areas. And actually, there's a pretty serious hard lock that can happen at the end of this dungeon if Chex isn't careful. I imagine, considering how early he got this first text message, that he's going to wind up waiting before he collects the pendant. But otherwise, we're just going to do a traditional run through the dungeon, just without a sword. So we're going to have to take a couple of extra damage boosts to get through some enemies, as well as our only weapon being the bow, but we don't quite have that yet. So there's the first instance of a little damage boost just to get by that little Popo. And then we're going to need to use another damage boost to get the big key, which you will see in almost every speedrun of this game. Take some damage here, lift up the pot, take some more damage. A little bit more than I think he wanted, but he's still okay. There's our second Zelda text message, so at this point, it's absolutely positive that Chex is not going to... he's actually guaranteed to have to wait before collecting the pendant after killing Armos. Just because of how early that text message showed up. Ooh, the Igor got saved by the Popo, and now he's got to kind of deal with all these other enemies getting in the way. This is actually pretty hairy. If he dies here, he has to start all over from the very start and have to clip out of bounds again. Oh, come on, Jax. There's a heart pod off to the right you should go get. That way you don't have to worry about all these enemies in your way. Oh, I didn't even get a drop off the Igor. He's running pretty low on arrows. You want to have as many as possible during these starting areas, because the arrows are literally your only weapon. Well, I guess thrown pots also work, but arrows are your primary source of damage through the next couple of areas. He's still a little bit short. I hope he gets an arrow drop here. He does get one, so he will at least have 30 going into the Armos fight. A little bit of a hiccup, but overall, so far, going pretty well. Now, because of the extra time he had to take due to some mishaps with the Dark Room, he actually didn't have to wait there. The Zelda text messages only occur once every minute of completely uninterrupted gameplay. Now, interruptions are in the form of any screen transition, being in any kind of menu. So, 1 minute is quite a long time, especially when you factor in all these extra transitions that you'd have to go from room to room. But now that we have the green pendant, we grab the boots, and we're going to go into the back of the closet here, grab some bombs and some rupees. And now we have to find some way to get back into the castle, one which skips going through the Uncle Tunnel. And it's actually rather difficult to get to the castle because we still have the invisible follower behind us, which means we can't use the B button to punch and thus readjust Link's position as he strafes back and forth, which is one of the primary methods of doing boots clips, which are one of your primary methods of getting out of bounds on the overworld. So, Chexhuman had to develop a new way of clipping through slopes when you have this invisible follower behind you. And you'll get to see that in just a moment as he dashes around this empty overworld. Alright, so on this next screen right here, the way he's going to clip is by dash buffering left, then dash buffering up, or not left, dash buffering to the right, then turning up, and then dash buffering right, and then turning up over and over and over, just to get a little bit further into that slope, just enough so we can dash jump down and go right through the barrier. So that lets him do some funky stuff, like getting into the castle, without doing any sort of traditional boots clip. That's one of the main ways that you can get in here, and kudos to Chex for discovering a way to do that. So now we're in the Hyrule Castle proper. Everything is nice and kosher at this point, and we're just going to go rescue Zelda normally. We're not going to do any sort of other special things while in escape here. Actually, that's kind of a lie. There is going to be one thing that I'm sure he's going to attempt. He's got 3 bombs to try it, I think. Now, at this point, arrows are still pretty precious, so he's got to use them as sparingly as possible. He ideally wants to use a few on the ball and chain guard just because it is so much faster than going for 2-pot or anything else. So he wants to have at least 4 going into the prison cell area. Also going to spend one on that guy there. So 4 arrows, the ball and chain guard is dead. We get the big key, and we begin to rescue Zelda. So now, I'm pretty sure Chex is going to attempt this. But what he's going to try to do is a bomb juke in this door in this room. Now, what a bomb juke is using a bomb in a doorway to snap over an invisible transitional border. Didn't quite get it there. He's got 2 more bombs to try this. So he's got to be very careful. He's going to try to get on an exact pixel here. There, he got it. Got the juke. And so now when he transitions again, he's over in the lobby of the castle and now can exit twice to reset the castle properly. Overall, this juke saves about 30-40 seconds, depending on if you get it first try or not. So from here on out, now we're going to go through the sewers. He has 1 arrow left, but luckily there's only 1 more enemy he has to kill, the key rat. He's not going to find any other arrows here in the sewers, so he has to be very careful about where he spends it. He does have a bomb just in case he misses with that arrow, but if he misses with that bomb as well, it's going to be rather difficult for Chex to continue. So he's got to be rather careful here. He's going to try to use the bomb first, which... Uh-oh. Please use the boomerang to stun him. Thank you. Alright. Does he have the right one? Oh, no! Oh, no. What can Chex do here? I don't know if there's no arrows or bombs that he can get. I think he has to restart the run entirely. Because he has no bombs or arrows, and any death is going to save his 0 bomb and arrow count. I don't think there's a way for him to recover from this right now. Yeah, even if he dies here, there's not going to be anything that gives him any more ammo to kill anything. Yep, back to the beginning. Well, I guess that gives me more time to explain what exactly this category entails. So, for those who joined us a bit late, this is Swordless no EG. It's a really difficult category. So, first of all, let's go ahead and answer the question, what is EG? EG is a glitch state where you are out of bounds and under the floor simultaneously, or very high above the floor, given the way that this game sort of interprets the layer that Link is on. So as long as we are within the main bounds of the game, or, above a valid floor and not underneath it, we are not in EG, which thankfully lets us abuse the hell out of the game once we start getting into the more busted door glitches. But before we get there, we need to get into the castle area without ever collecting a sword. And the main way we do that is by clipping out of this initial area with a downward teleport, so we can bypass these golden guards who would love to just talk to Link all frickin' day. So instead, we clip around them and head to Eastern Palace. So an interesting thing about this game is the only sprites that are on the overworld are the golden guards and the green guards around the castle and Link's house. Everything else doesn't quite exist yet. those sprites don't get loaded in until you rescue Zelda or defeat Agahnim 1. Now, one thing that's rather difficult for Chex right now is that he has no real weapon, and the major weapon that he winds up getting has a very limited amount of ammo that he can use. But until he even gets to that point, he has nothing but pots to throw at the enemies, so he has to take certain damage boosts in order to get past certain rooms efficiently. And of course, while he's doing all of this, Zelda's trying to contact him saying, "Hey, where are you going? You're supposed to go to the secret passage that's next to the castle and help rescue me." But if we do that, we have to go say hi to our uncle, who immediately gives us a sword. And since this is supposed to be a swordless category, we can't exactly do that. So we're going to go ahead and take a roundabout route. Alright, so luckily the game only cares that we are stepping on that switch for any amount of time. Doesn't matter if it's between getting hit by those anti-fairies. Just as long as you are standing on that switch, the chest will appear. So we get to use that nice set of damage boosts to get the big key a little bit earlier. Especially when we have such limited weaponry. And now we finally get our main source of damage for the beginning of the game, the bow. Now hopefully things are going to go a bit better this time in the Dark Room, where we don't get another enemy shielding a hit for the other. Luckily it went through just fine. You got this, Chex. Being down those 4 arrows is not going to be good, I think. Oh, Zelda, this was such a bad time to start talking. Ooh, I don't like the looks of this. Okay, he still got the quick kill. Whew. Still got the quick kill, has 8 arrows with which to go through the escape area. He needs to use at least 5 to kill the guards before getting to the ball and chain guard, which unfortunately isn't enough to kill him, so he is going to have to go for the 2-pot strat, I think. But luckily, we're past Eastern, and now we're going to go get the boots. Now, one thing that's been happening the whole time that we've been going through Eastern is that Link has had an invisible follower right next to him. And in fact, that's basically Zelda trying to talk to him. Now, this invisible follower prevents Link from using his sword, or lack thereof, in order to hold out his sword and kind of move left and right without changing direction. Now, without that ability, it's actually rather difficult to go out of bounds when you have the boots, whereas normally when you have the sword or a method of doing that sort of strafing motion, it's rather easy to go out of bounds with the boots. Now, because of this, Chex had to develop another way of clipping out of bounds, which we will see as he goes around the overworld here. Hi, Zelda. Please stop talking to us. Please. We've had enough of this. Alright, so the method that Chex developed to clip into this little slope down here is to dash buffer to the right, then turn to face up, then dash buffer to the right, then turn to face up, over and over and over, just to get a little bit further and further into the slope until he can dash jump through it and jump down. This allows him to wrap the screen in such a way that lets him get into the castle really quickly while also skipping the uncle. Now, he still has to be careful. If he takes a death before reaching Zelda, then he will respawn back at his bed again. So he's got to be careful not to take too much damage. You're scaring me, Chex. You're scaring me. Alright, good. He does go for the heart pot there. Zelda, please! We're in the middle of something. Stop it! Please! Alrighty, so now we're back to the ball and chain guard. Alright, he did get to avoid being seen by the green guard and picked up the pot from the right, which actually lets the ball and chain guard start walking toward him a little bit sooner. Alright, so now we've got the big key. We haven't spent any arrows. We now have 3 with which to hit that key rat later on in sewers. We're in a much better position than before. Now, luckily, since Zelda is following us, we're not going to get any more just random text messages. Thankfully. Alright, so we're still going to go for this bomb juke here. Now, one interesting thing that's happening right now is, even though he has Zelda behind him, without Zelda being rescued, he can't use the select menus, so he has to do this rather manually, which is a lot harder, in my opinion. So it's really a testament to how good Chex is at this game that that he is pursuing such a difficult category and doing all these honestly rather difficult tricks under harder constraints than you would do them normally. This run is really hard. And he's the only one to have taken it on. At least so far. Alrighty. So luckily, right now, since we've rescued Zelda, we don't quite have to worry if we wind up dying, because then we'll just respawn back in the prison. We just have to make sure that we get the key off of the sewer right here. That is the most important part right now. Oh, that's not the right one. Chex, please. Oh. Jax, you're scaring me so much. But luckily, we're past the hard part here. We don't have to worry anymore. We've finished escape. We've unlocked the door that was blocking him earlier. So even if he dies at this point, it doesn't matter. He can just walk back to this area and everything will be fine. Luckily, with the boots, we can go ahead and bonk those 2 doors open and get 300 rupees and 10 more arrows. So we're a little bit better equipped than we were before. And finally, after 12 minutes, we've rescued Zelda for the first time. That's right, only 12 minutes. So now that we've rescued Zelda, the first thing we want to do is we want to go and let's see, do I have this right? Yeah, he's going to go to town, get some bottles, get some bombs. Just get some initial equipment out of the way. So we're going to go get the tavern bottle here. We're going to get the bug net from the sick kid. We're going to go buy some bombs. And then we're going to go buy another bottle. And once we have that, now our next stop is to go up Death Mountain so we can go get the Mire. So Chex is going to do the classic Death Mountain ascent, which involves doing an upward teleport, which is going to go right over the transition right above him here, which kind of wraps the screen in a weird way, so that when he transitions over, he's on the Death Mountain screen, but has to correct his camera a bit. If he doesn't correct his screen here before entering the cave, the transition into the cave winds up taking an extra couple of minutes. So he's got to be very careful about that, while also dodging all the dead rocks and boulders. So now we're rescuing the old man. Yet another follower. Now this guy's kind of annoying because you can't dash with him. If you try to dash with him, he just slows you down. So we dodge some more dead rocks and boulders as we escort the old man over to his little home cave over here. And now Chex is going to do a clip to wrap the screen so that he's up next to the Tower of Hera, and then he's going to go down and go into the Dark World. Now, because he wrapped the screen, that caused a disconnect between where the game thinks Link is locally versus where he actually is on the world map. So right now, as he's descending Death Mountain again, the game now thinks he's on the pyramid screen, so when he places this mirror in a very precise location, it's actually on the pyramid and precisely right in front of the crack in the wall where the pyramid fairy resides. And he wants to get there so that he can get some initial potions as well as the silver arrows. Now, before he can go to where he places portal, he has to fix his camera while also talking to the old man. And now he's going to do something really crazy. He's got to do a downward teleport, which means he goes into that slope 9 pixels deep while doing it fast enough to dodge all the boulders. I'm honestly amazed that he can do it so well. Now, because he came off of Death Mountain in that fashion, the game is a little bit confused about where that hole is supposed to take him, and so it just drops him off into Houlihan, which is basically the game's way of error checking where to put you if you fall into a hole incorrectly on the overworld. So now we get to see where exactly that portal wound up, which is right over here by these sort of orange bushes. Now that puts us right in the crack in the pyramid, which lets us go right inside. And now we get to talk to the Pyramid Fairy. So we get the silver arrows. And then we have to wait a bit while the fairy, I guess, recharges her magic. And then we're going to give her a bottle to fill with that magic. And then we're going to ask her to do that again. Check's ringing the bell for service. Hey, come on, you got a customer here. So now that he's got these 2 bottles, our next stop is actually to go to Thieves Town. But we're not going to go there the way that you think. The way we're going to get there is via the tunnel where you would normally talk to Uncle. Now, he's still there, just kind of lying around, waiting for you to talk to him. But we're just going to ignore him for right now. What we're going to do instead is do 2 bomb jukes in a row. Now, these bomb jukes are actually really hard to do, and it takes a minimum of 5 bombs to do it, RTA. The first bomb is just to get Link in the very bottom of the screen. The second one he's throwing above the wall there to use a visual cue to know when he has moved 2 frames down after placing the third bomb, which he's going to use to snap over the transition and thus juke this doorway. Once he does that, that's going to put him into Thieves Town, but his camera is a bit screwed up, so he has to fix that by doing another bomb juke where he goes into the doorway, has to make sure Link is a bit invisible there, and now he's going to use the red Zazik as a visual cue to make sure he's gone 2 frames down before he can grab the bomb again and snap below. This trick is really hard to do. But he's done it. So now, the game thinks we're in a cave state, but we're also in Thieves Town. Now, cave state is an interesting beast. Since we're in a cave, the game initializes the key counter to a -1 value, which, since it's an 8-bit number, winds up actually being interpreted as 255. Now, the game only cares about opening up key doors if your key value is 0. If it's 0, it doesn't open. Otherwise, it opens up the door and subtracts 1 from your key counter. Additionally, when you're in a cave, you can open up big chests and big key doors if you have one of the following big keys in your possession. The Hyrule Castle big key, the Palace of Darkness big key, the GT big key, or the Thieves Town big key. So we have the Hyrule Castle one, which means we can open up big key doors all we want, as well as any of the small key doors for the reasons I explained earlier. Now, another thing we're going to do as we're exiting the Thieves Town area here is grab the big key out of the chest. Now, grabbing a big key while you're in cave state actually winds up confusing the game as to which big keys you have, and actually winds up giving you the Desert Palace big key as well as the Hera big key. So we're accomplishing quite a lot by coming into Thieves Town the way that we do. And you may or may not have noticed, but as Chex has been dashing through Thieves Town, he hasn't had to care at all about whether enemies are going to run into him or not, which is a fantastic consequence of doing the door dukes from Uncle to get to Thieves Town. So now we're on a Dark World screen, and we can enter Thieves Town very quickly. Now, oddly enough, even though we're in Thieves Town, we actually have no way currently to damage blind. When you're swordless, the only weapons you can get that can damage blind are the hammer, the cane of Samaria, or the cane of Birna. Now, we're not going to be getting the cane of Birna this run, and we're nowhere near where the hammer is. So the actual weapon we're going to use to defeat blind is the cane of Samaria, but getting the Cane of Samaria from this state is actually a bit of a trek. So Chex opened up very specific key doors so that he'll have enough keys to get to the Cane of Samaria a little bit later. He's already got one extra key, and will be getting a second from the room with the crystal switch. As soon as he gets past the Hellaway here, which is a bit annoying to deal with since you have no real way of dealing with any of the enemies there outside of dodging them. So we're going to go up to the attic, open the bombable floor, and then we're going to clip to deserts. Now, we already opened up the big key chest for Thieves Town, so we can't use that big key here. We actually have no way of... we actually have no big key currently for Thieves Town. So we're going to go ahead and borrow one from another dungeon, which is precisely what this bomb clip that he's setting up is going to do. Now, a bomb clip is using the bomb explosion to clip into the slope in such a way that you can use it to trick the game into pushing Link into a transition going south here. Now, this is just a traditional out-of-bounds that goes through the walls. He's not going under the floor, which means this is not EG. Now, he's collecting this big key that's normally from Desert, but since the game thinks he's in Thieves Town, it counts for this dungeon now. This is where some of the extra small keys come into play. One of them is used there. And now he's going to get another one from the Desert Torch. With these two extra keys, he's going to do what we lovingly refer to as a Yuzuhara bottle adventure to get to Misery Mire. Now, Yuzuhara's bottle adventure is the main method that we like to use for doing door glitches, which is basically just using a potion on the same frame as a transition. And we call it door glitches because they're primarily done in doorways, but there are other methods of getting the same sort of effect to occur. Now, in order to actually do a YBA, you have to be able to use the potion, so having a little bit of your magic missing at this point is actually ideal so you can use the green potion. He knows that he gets the YBA by both the camera sort of being in this weird state there where it's not exactly right on top of him, as well as getting a full heal of both magic and hearts. So this takes him right to Misery Mire in the basement, and he can just backtrack using the small keys to open up the locked doors along the way and head straight to the Cane of Samaria. Now, once he gets the Cane of Samaria, he's going to do an extra couple of glitches, which are going to be very important later. He's going to open a specific key door, and then do some door glitches to write the open state of that door onto the big key door that is right in front of Trinix. So, effectively, he's going to get the cane, do some door glitches, and that will delete the door that's right in front of Trinix, meaning he doesn't have to go get the big key when he gets to Turtle Rock later. At least, that's the attempt he's going to try here. It's rather difficult to do. So now we have the cane. He has the door open that he wanted to earlier. The one to the left of that chest in this room. So he's going to place the block high up into the wall here. He's going to walk into the block at the same time as the transition. So now the game thinks he's kind of one room above where he is. And now he's going to do the same thing in this other doorway, which is a bit harder because the block doesn't exactly snap you exactly where he wants to be. Unfortunately, he didn't get it, so we are going to have to get the T-Rock big key later on in the run. It's not a game ender, but it does waste a little bit of time. Nonetheless, we have the Cane of Samaria, so we're able to finish off this dungeon the way that we want to. We do still need to rescue the maiden and defeat Blind to get the crystal for Thieves Town. Still annoying to deal with this room when you have little to no way of defending yourself. Now, we did pick up the gloves a bit earlier when we took a detour through desert, so we just have to lift up this block, and now we can go rescue the maiden rather quickly. However, once we rescue her, we're not quite done with trying to glitch the game out. There's another little bit of stuff that we want to do. So we're going to stun these enemies so they don't get in our way. And now we're going to do a West Samaria, which is going to kind of screw with how the game interprets how some later door transitions are going to work, as well as kind of wrap Link around into a different room real quick. So he has to scroll the screen back so we can use the Samaria block again and hit this transition while walking into the block at the same time. So now the game thinks he's up a room, but the transitions are also kind of weird, so when he goes through that door, it brings him into Swamp Palace. And now from here, he's going to use the big key that he got from Desert to get the hook shot. And if he moves in a precise way here, he's going to transition over, which kind of puts him right back where he was. And then he's going to transition one more time to go into the room to the right. And now he's going to transition up 2 more times, and this will take him into Tower of Hera, where he'll use the hook shot to go across the gap and collect the Moon Pearl. And now we're going to go defeat Blind. And luckily, the blind fight is actually really easy. You just kind of place the block there, wait for blind to go to the side, explode it, then place the block right back again. You do the exact same thing 3 times in a row and you kill blind. The only hard part is just dodging the heads. And there we go. We have collected our first crystal. So, one of the fun things that was a consequence of all the glitches that we just did was we originally started this whole sequence from Uncle Tunnel, which means we started in the light world. Now, we haven't actually changed which world the game thinks we're in right now, even though we're on a dark world, overworld screen in a dark world dungeon. The game still thinks we're in the light world. Now, if we cause a screen transition while on the overworld, it'll resolve that right back to the real light world. So we want to get some things from the dark world first, so we have to use the mirror. Now, the mirror just happens to work when you're on a any dark world overworld screen, regardless of what world the game thinks you're in. We like to call this state fake dark world. However, we've already mirrored, so now we're in the real dark world. There is also a corresponding fake light world, but that one is seen much less often. So we're just collecting a bunch of 300 rupees chests because we want to have as much money as possible for later purchases of potions. And now we're going to head into Skull Woods. So while we're in Skull Woods, we're going to do some more shenanigans in order to get the big key early, as well as to mess with how the game interprets certain collisions, or transitions, rather. So in this next room, we're going to do a Samaria glitch in the doorway at the top, which will load both the chest data from the room up above, as well as the transitions from there. So once we get this North Samaria here, the data that we get loaded into this chest is the big key. Normally this is a map, I think. Oh wait, no, it's a compass, excuse me. And then this transition normally leads into what we call the pinball room, which has some mummies, some spikes, some bumpers, and a wall master. Instead, we pop out right by the big chest, and we can get the fire rod very easily. now we just go kill Mothula. Now, the way we're going to get to Mothula is going to be a little bit different than what you'd expect. We're going to do another glitch with the Cane of Samaria, where we bypass a room entirely by not only causing the transition while walking to a block, but continuing to walk forward, which will actually skip over a few rooms, which you normally have to light a bunch of torches while dodging some mummies. Now, keep in mind, the only weapons that Chex has to actually damage Moth right now are the Cane of Samaria and the Fire Rod. So he's got to be a bit careful with how he uses his magic, and he's trying to dodge this Fire Snake here, so that he doesn't get some VRAM corruption from doing this Samaria glitch. So now he's got to take care of this Gibdo here, which is easily done with a silver arrow. Now, Mothula is a rather difficult boss. It takes at least 8 Fire Rod shots to kill Moth, but we don't have a full magic bar. So how are we going to do it? We're going to get as many Fire Rod shots in as we can, and then the second green potion that we got from the Pyramid Fairy earlier is hopefully going to clean up the rest. And there we go. So now we have our second crystal. Now, some of you may be wondering, well, why don't we just get the hammer earlier? Because the hammer is a consistent, infinite source of damage that we can continually use without having to worry about magic meters or arrow counts or anything like that. Well, the main reason we want to put it off for as late as we can is because we're going to wind up using the Palace of Darkness to get the Mire crystal later. And we would rather do all that we can for Palace of Darkness all in one go. But before we can even get to Palace of Darkness, we need to go buy some potions. Chex just used that hole there so he could arm a water walk, which lets him get across this channel without needing to worry about the flippers. Now, after this, we're going to go grab the flippers anyway, because doing Swamp without them is rather annoying, and it's a lot faster to just go grab them anyway. We're not trying to skip everything we can, we're just trying to skip the sword. So that's one of the reasons why we needed so many rupees up to this point. So now we have our flippers, and our next destination is to go to Palace of Darkness. Now, we're not going to go there the traditional way. Or, I guess for glitch categories, it is the traditional way, but it's not going to be the way you go through the game normally. What we're going to do is first we're going to make a little pit stop in Hera. Now, we can't kill Moldorm, but there is something we want to do while we're here. We want to open up the big key door, because we have the big key thanks to getting one while in cave state. And we're going to use that open door to, as well as some Samaria glitches, to open up another door which normally never gets opened. We call this door deletion. So he's got to use this Samaria block to get down into this doorway in a very specific way. He actually has to juke the transition first, then back out a little bit, and now he's deleted what we call the sewer door. And that's going to become very important later. But for now, just know that we have deleted the sewer door. And so now we're going to do a Kiki skip. And Chex is going to use a bomb clip, which is just like what he did in Thieves Town to get to Desert, dashing into the explosion such that the way the game interprets the collision lets him go right to the transition. Now, because he started from the cave with the mini Moldorms there, he is in a cave state, so he does have essentially 255 keys yet again. Now, realistically, he only has to open up this key door. The rest of the doors are much quicker to open through other means. Now, the first thing we're actually going to wind up doing is a glitch we call Death Hole, which is a frame-perfect death that will happen on the same frame that the game tries to put Link into the room below where he would fall to. This is done with a consistent setup where you item dash with a bomb to bonk and then slash as you're walking into the hole from a very precise pixel. What this does is it takes some room data from the room that you're in and writes it into the room that you're going to fall to, which happens to be the unlocked door that he opened when he opened up the key door while in cave state. So that opens up the key door that would normally lead you to the big key here in Palace of Darkness. Now, I want you to remember that Death Hole will write data to the room that it's going to lead to later. That is going to be very important later. We're going to be doing that again at some point. The next thing we're going to do in this dungeon is collect the hammer, which we're going to do by utilizing the hammer jump, which is a pixel-perfect bomb jump that clips through the rail and crosses the pits in this room with a falling bridge. So he has to get onto a precise pixel so he can place the bomb. Alright, and then he has to get to a precise pixel so that the bomb will blast him through the rail, and he's also on a timer with the falling bridge. So now we have the hammer. And now we have to get to Helmasaur. There are a few ways you can get to Helmasaur. You have bow, you could go the traditional way, but since we're allowed to use door glitches, we're going to use something else. Chex likes to do something we call early Helma, because it doesn't require you to have either the bow or the hammer in order to reach Helmasaur. Normally you need both. But Chex likes to skip all of that nonsense. He's going to do what we call a mirror door, which is like a door glitch that we call the Yuzuhara Bottle Adventure, but instead of using a potion, we use the mirror. Now, there's a few extra stipulations involved when doing a mirror door. There's a value that the game, for some reason, starts to use as a timer when you do the mirror door, which actually corresponds with the fanfare that you get after you defeat Ganon, which opens up the Triforce door. As you see, it deleted a bit of the wall there. That bit of deleted wall is going to be important because now we're going to do another Samaria glitch, which is just going to load the room to the right of us. And with that bit of deleted wall there, we're going to transition upwards, which puts us past where the turtle party is in the dark rooms after the arrow statue. So now we're over here by the orange warp. And we can just go up through the hallway here with the turtles and go right to Helmasaur. Now, you don't need the hammer to get through those turtles. You could just damage boost through them if you want. Now, in case that wasn't clear, the mirror door is when you invoke the mirror door, it starts a timer which is linked to the Triforce door opening when you defeat Ganon. So as soon as that timer runs out, it deletes the section of wall that would normally lead to the Triforce room, but localized onto the screen that you're on. So that door is actually the game trying to open up the room to the Triforce. So a lot of complicated things happening. But now we have the Palace of Darkness crystal, but we aren't quite done with Palace of Darkness yet. As I may have mentioned earlier, we're going to use the Palace of Darkness in order to get the Misery Mire crystal. The way we do that is by starting with the Palace of Darkness dungeon ID, then making our way to the sewer door that we deleted earlier, going through that door, which then changes the dungeon ID conveniently to Misery Mire, and then get to another boss room that we defeat, and that will drop the Misery Mire crystal. Because the game only cares about what dungeon ID you have when it determines which crystal it gives you. So, we'll be going through that a bit more slowly as Chex goes through the process here. Alright, so we have the Palace of Darkness dungeon ID currently, and we need to get to the castle sewers so that we can go through the deleted sewer door. The way we do that is through a YBA in this next room, where he's going to confuse the game about what the pits in this room should do. Normally they're supposed to damage you, but with this YBA, it borrows some data from the room below, which says pits aren't going to damage Link. Now, when he falls into the pit, when they aren't supposed to damage him, it takes him to a destination, which just so happens to be the boss room in Tower of Hera. So, hello, Moldorm. How you doing? Now, Chex doesn't have to kill Moldorm right here, right now, but he chooses to get an extra heart container, as well as to just have Moldorm out of the way. However, we're not going to collect the crystal here. In fact, there is no crystal to drop because we already have one for Palace of Darkness. Instead, we're going to drop all the way down to the entrance, and then go up one floor, where we will do another bomb clip, which takes us from Tower of Hera into the sewers directly. We get rid of a couple of these beetles so they're not in his way. Uh-oh. Missed the bomb clip, but it's okay. He's got a consistent lineup for it. Was just a little bit late in starting the dash. There we go. So now we're in sewers, and as you'll notice, he's going to dash through a completely locked door. That's the sewer door that we deleted earlier. And now when he goes up, his dungeon ID is now set to Misery Mire, because he started from Palace of Darkness. So now he has to make his way to another boss room. Unfortunately, the main way that you get there is by going through Hera again, and now he has... but he can't use the Moldorm boss room in order to get it. He can't get the... Let me say that again. Despite going back to Tower of Hera from sewers here, he's not going to be able to collect the crystal for Misery Mire, because the game crashes when you try to collect the crystal in a Light World dungeon, because it doesn't know how to load the crystal cutscene. Instead, he has to go to another boss room. He's going to go into the room where the Hera big key door is, and do a downward No, he's going to go where the big chest is, not the big key door, where the big chest is, do another downward teleport, which is going to take him to Swamp. So here we see the YBA going from sewers into Tower of Hera. And he's going to go up a floor to where the big chest is, and then do a downward teleport, which will put him into Swamp Palace. This one is a slightly different bomb clip setup, but it works just about the same. He just has to do a couple of buffered movements to move onto a precise pixel. Didn't quite get it, so he's going to try again. A little bit of trouble with this one. It's rather finicky because you don't always get blasted to the same part of the wall. But he gets it this time. So the game still thinks he's in Misery Mire, but now he's in Swamp Palace. And he's just going to follow the rest of the dungeon normally and go defeat Argus. Alright, so now we are at the Argus fight. Now, the only way that Chex has to... Well, it's not the only way, but the main way he's going to get rid of these puffs is by hooking... he's going to try to hook two at once, but it's rather difficult to get both of them before they start getting away from you. Now that we're done with phase 1, we go to phase 2, which is just a singular serval arrow as soon as it hits. God, Argus is so hard to hit if you miss that first arrow. But we're done. Now the game thinks we're in Misery Mire, so we get the Misery Mire Crystal, but we're in the Argus boss room. So once we get done with this crystal cutscene, it's going to spit us out at Swamp Palace. For those of you who are wondering, every single glitch that Glan has done, or that, that Chexhuman has done in this run so far is entirely possible on the US version. There are going to be a few that aren't, but so far every single one has been doable on the US version. Now, we actually started, okay, hold on. Let me think about what's going on here for a second. So, we just defeated Argus, we got the Misery Mire Crystal, but we still need to get the Swamp Crystal. Luckily, Argus is already dead, so as soon as we load the dungeon, we just go through it one more time, and once we get to the boss room, the crystal will drop. So, it's just another quick trek through the dungeon. Oh boy, yeah, Chex and I are starting to lose focus a little bit. Luckily, everything in the dungeon has already been mostly completed, so we can just go through it really quickly here. We don't have to drain the water again, we can just go right through this door. And now the swamp crystal will drop from the sky, and we collect it. Now we get a nice little break of just mashing some text. Little bit of trivia for you. This is actually the longest crystal cutscene in the game. I forget what the exact timing for it is, but I know it's a little bit under a minute. And now we're done with Swamp Palace, and our next stop is going to be the Ice Palace. Now, the way we're going to get there is a little bit not traditional. We're going to go ahead and clip this slope, and then transition on a precise pixel here so that we can get right up next to the transition border easily, then hit the mirror and transition on the same frame, which causes a mirror wrap. Now, Chex has to be careful not to go too far up there, otherwise he hardlocks his game, but doing that mirror wrap actually transports him way over on the overworld and puts him right in front of Ice Palace. So now we're going to do another bomb clip to skip a few rooms, which brings us to the bombable floor. And then once we do the Ice Palace bomb jump, the rest of this dungeon is rather normal. Ooh, got that set up right at the last second there. Oh, he's going for my penguin lineup strat. Oh, I missed the hammer, though. Aw. That strat is actually really hard to do with the hammer. It's a bit easier to do with the sword, and he could have used the hook shot to kill the bottom pen gator. But he did try to go for the most efficient one, I think. Because the next item he does need is the hammer. Chex is going to take it a little bit safe here. He does have the bug net, so he's going to backtrack a little bit so he can pick up a fairy from this convenient fairy room in Ice Palace. Because Coldstare hits like a truck. I guess since it's coming up in chat a little bit, we had to do a lot of glitches in order to get the Misery Mire Crystal, because the main way you're supposed to get into that dungeon normally requires using the Ether Medallion on a specific spot on the overworld. Now, if we never grab a sword, we actually can't use the Ether Medallion, even if we collect one, which isn't trivial to get on its own. So we had to come up with another way of getting the Misery Mire dungeon ID, which happened to use the sewer door. Now, Chex doesn't have any potions. The only thing he has right now are fairies, so he has to kill Coldstare while using the hammer only. That's his only weapon at this point that can kill Coldstare. Two down, one to go. And Coldstare is dead. We add another crystal to our collection. To answer your question, Phase 9 Alex, we actually had to use those potions in order to get the Mire crystal earlier, and so we were actually out of potions entirely when we got to the Coldstare fight at this point. It would have cost more time to go get another potion than it would be to just kill Coldstare normally with the hammer and an empty magic bar. Alright, so our next stop is to get a couple more potions. And turns out we didn't need those fairies, so we can just let them roam free. Because we need potions more at this point. Alrighty, so our next stop is Desert Palace. However, we're not going to go kill Landmolas right away. Because we already have the Misery Mire crystal, we actually have to defeat Vitreous, but from another dungeon. If you defeat a boss in a Dark World dungeon, but already have that dungeon's crystal, your game will hard lock because it has nothing to drop from the sky. And you actually can't mirror or saving quit or even take damage from your own bombs once a boss is declared dead. So you have to have another dungeon prize, like another pendant or crystal, in order to get out of the Vitreous room once you kill him. Which luckily we can use the Desert Pendant to do. Now, all that I just said with the Dark World bosses there does not apply to the Light World bosses, which will be very important in just a little bit. First, let's focus on killing Vitreous. So you may remember this YBA from earlier in the run, which brought us from Desert into Misery Mire. We're going to do the exact same thing, but now that we have the Cane of Samaria, we can go through the basement relatively normally by just placing a block on that switch. Now, you may be thinking, well, we've never been to Desert Palace before, and there's a big key door in front of Vitreous. How come we're able to go there right now? Well, we collected a big key much earlier in the run while we were in a cave state, which happened to work for multiple dungeons. And you saw Chex throw a block into the void there, and you can see he's doing something we call spooky action glitch, which is a displacement from where the fire rod shot hits a wall or an enemy, and where a splash damage effect occurs. There's a bit more to explain about it, and unfortunately I think I chose the wrong thing to try to explain there. But do know that spooky action is a minor glitch that you can use in most Link to the Past speedruns, and even works on the US version. So now Vitreous is dead thanks to the power of silver arrows, and because the game thinks we're in Desert Palace, we get the blue pendant. Alright, next on the list, we need to go kill Lenmolas. And after we kill Lenmolas, we get to do probably the most important glitch for this entire run. I mean, getting the Misery Mire crystal and such is important, but this one is even more important to being able to finish the category. So first, let's go ahead and be on the way to killing Lenmolas. Now, you'll see Chex be taking a lot of damage as he's going through the dungeon. This is on purpose. He actually wants to be at a low amount of health by the time he kills Lenmolas. Aw, just missed the triple kill there. So, let's go ahead and start talking about deleting Ganon. Since this category doesn't use EG, it's actually rather difficult to get into the Triforce room. But we figured out recently that you can take the save data that the game uses to interpret when a boss is killed, and use that and write that data to the Ganon fight room. And doing this actually deletes Ganon entirely. He just doesn't spawn, and then the game just opens up the Triforce door for you when you fall into the fight. Now, the way we actually write it to his room is really interesting. First, we have to start from a boss room where the boss is already defeated. So we're going to go ahead and kill Lenmolas, and we're going to use the property where the door to the Light World bosses are already open if the dungeon prize for this dungeon is already collected. So now, Chex is going to use a YBA to write the defeated boss flag into the room below. And he gets it first try. So, a weird consequence of having the boss defeated flag in the same room that you are means that you can't use bombs to damage yourself, which is going to be important. But we're not quite done writing data yet. We still need to move that data one room lower, which he's going to use a Samaria glitch to do. Now, for those of you who happen to know the exploration glitch map, or what we call the exploration glitch map, it's really just a map that shows you how all the dungeons and such are strewn about in the game's memory. You may know that Lenmolas is nowhere near Ganon, but we're going to use some pits that we create with some Samaria glitches. And then we're going to do a death hole in one of those pits, which happens to write data to where that pit would lead, which happens to be the Ganon room. So we're going to write the data into the room where we're going to create the pits. And now we want to be low on health. We want to be at 2 hearts or less. I think he's going to get shot by a Beamos here in a little bit, just to be at just under 2 hearts. So there we go. He's going to do a North Samaria, which is going to create some holes that he can't see. And then he's going to place a block, as well as move in a very precise way so that he gets shot by a Beamos, which he then uses to time another Beamos shot to get a frame-perfect death into a hole that he can't see. This is all because we don't take damage from our own bombs, because we have a boss defeated flag written into the room that we're in. And there we go. We just deleted Ganon. Now, this setup is actually a very new discovery that Chex and I have kind of hammered out in the last couple of days. The previous setup that we had for it relied on doing a much more volatile YBA out of a boss room that, if you miss it, winds up costing you a minute or so every time you mess up. And it's a very easy YBA to mess up. Now Chex is doing some overworld shenanigans to get over to the Ice Rod Cave as quickly as he can from a fresh save and quit. Welcome to Ice Rod Cave. So earlier in the run, we killed Moldorm, but we didn't collect the Hera pendant yet. we're going to go ahead and do that now. We basically cleared everything else out of Tower of Hera, so this is the last thing left we have to do in this dungeon. Now, Moldorm's already dead, so once we reach that room, it's just going to fall from the sky. It is kind of nice to go through a dungeon relatively normally for once. Gonna say. So one funny thing about the Hera pendant, it is that it always drops in the same place, no matter which room you put it in. All the other crystals and pendants drop based on where the camera is when the game tries to drop that crystal or pendant. Hera is the only one where it's hard-coded to drop in the same place every time, which actually makes it impossible to get from any other dungeon without EG, which is kind of funny. Just random little fact. But now we're going to go to Turtle Rock. We're going to do a downward teleport on the slope, and then move up the mountain here with some precise inputs that just kind of abuse the game's collision. And now we're going to do another mirror wrap, which is going to take us to where the big chest is for Turtle Rock. Oh, I guess he's doing the all dungeons method. So he's going to go to Laser Bridge first, so that once he gets the big key for Turtle Rock, he can just mirror and head to Trinex that way. He does need to collect a couple of small keys on the way to open up a couple of locked doors that happen to be in his path. Jax, you didn't delete the Trinix door. Jax. You didn't quite get it earlier in the run. You need to go delete the Trinix door. I think he can still do this here. It is hard to remember what you did so much earlier in the run. And it's one of those tricks that is over and done with so quickly that it's just hard to remember sometimes. We're actually not going to delete the Trinix door. We tried to do that earlier in the run, but it didn't quite work, so we decided to not try again, because setting that back up takes way too much time. So if you don't delete the Trinix door on your first try, it's just better to abandon that idea and go through the dungeon in this fashion. Now, because he started at the laser bridge, as soon as he gets the big key here, he can just mirror back to that point and head straight to Trinex. Relatively standard Trinix fight when you don't have a sword. Hammer is your best and only method of really killing these two heads. And literally your only method of killing the last one when you don't have a sword. And now we have our last crystal. There's still a couple of bosses we need to kill. We haven't faced either Agahnim yet, and we do have to kill both of them. First up is going to be Agahnim 2. Now we're going to do a North Samaria and a YBA. Or at least I think, is that going to be the way he does it? I don't know. I don't remember if he has any potions left at this point. He might not. We'll see what he does. Just know that there's multiple ways of getting to Agahnim 2 from where he is right now. Alright, so he's going to use a different method from the one I started to describe there. He does have to mirror from there, because there's no other way to get off of the Turtle Rock nose. But he's going to go back into the Dark World, so that he can go over by the big chest, which has a much easier way to get to Agahnim 2. At least in my opinion. So now we're going to do... We're going to get Mirror Shield because we can, I guess. It doesn't actually serve any purpose at this point. But we're going to do a North Samaria here. And then we're going to do some camera trickery to confuse the game a bit. And fall in a specific way so that we fall right into the Agahnim 2 fight. Welcome to Agahnim 2. Oh, missed the item dash there with the net, so didn't get any hits on the first cycle there. It's 1, 2 for the second. 3, blue ball. Oh, a little bit mistimed there. 4, 5. One more. And that's Agahnim 2 down. Now we still have to go kill Agahnim 1. But climbing Aga Tower is actually extraordinarily slow, so we're going to do something else. You know, I think I said earlier we were done with Tower of Hera. That actually wasn't correct. We're gonna go back in there one more time. So now we're going to go to the same doorway that we used to delete the sewer door earlier, but we're going to do Samaria glitches in the other direction. Or rather, just one. And doing that, plus a door juke in that door off to the right, is going to put us into a room right next to where Agahnim is. Alright, so he gets the door juke, does transition, and now he's next to Agahnim, but not quite. He's got to dash out of the room, but the collision is a bit weird. And now he's got to dash into the fight. and defeat Agahnim. So far, so good. I think we've only had one blue ball so far. There's number 2. And there's the last hit. So now Agahnim 1 is dead. We've already killed Agahnim 2. We have all the crystals. We've defeated all the other bosses. And we already deleted Ganon. So now we listen to Sahazrla prattle on and on and on about stuff we've already done. Seriously, I really hate this text box. It lasts so long. And actually, Chex is on pace right now to get a PB, which would be world record since he's the only one that has run this category before. His record is a 118.54. So this is a sizable PB here. He falls into the hole, and since Ganon is deleted, he just declares victory. And now we're waiting for the timer for the Triforce door to count down, and as soon as it does, he's going to dash up to the Triforce room and complete the run. GG. Congratulations, Chex. This run is extremely difficult, and I have to give Chex a lot of props for sticking with this category. Hard tricks, a lot of really hard combat, and is honestly one of my favorite categories. He and I have worked a lot in trying to make this category as quick as possible, while also devising some ways of making it somewhat easier. Oh, man. This has been a real joy to commentate. But if you liked all the glitches that you saw in this run, you might get to see some of them in the next thing we have up next in the schedule, which is going to be a no-logic rando race between Chex and myself. We're able to use any glitch that we want, except for EG. So all the stuff that we saw in this run is fair game, except for deleting Ganon. That is the one thing from this run that we cannot do in no logic randomizer, because it kind of defeats the purpose of collecting everything you need to defeat him. Especially with all the ways we have now of deleting him. It's actually not that hard anymore. So yeah, if you want to see more game-breaking nonsense, you can stay tuned. I bet it'll be a blast, especially with the two of us beginning to run on fumes.